Parents disowned me 10 years ago when I came out as gay. My dad died 2 months ago, still no contact. Last week my mom called wanting to be a part of my life. Then came the truth, she's suffering from ALS, and after Dad died, there was no one to take care of her and her bills. She's demanding a part of inheritance my grandparents left me, claiming family comes first. AITA for laughing at my dying mom and telling her no. When I came out as gay at 20, my parents didn't react as I'd hoped. Instead of acceptance, I got a blunt, "leave now," and zero chance to talk things over. I'd always been an only child, and for years, I was the center of their universe. But the moment I said, "I'm gay," all that love vanished. Suddenly, I was out on the street with just my backpack and a couple of $100. My dad even slammed the door, saying, "Good luck with that lifestyle." For a while, things were rough. I couch surfed, took up multiple minimum wage jobs, and barely made rent, often unsure where my next meal would come from. I only heard from my parents once after they'd cut me off, a voicemail telling me my mom didn't want to hear from me again. But 2 months ago, my dad passed away from lung cancer. I found out from a distant cousin who messaged me after seeing my mother's Facebook post. She'd shared some heavily edited family portrait as a tribute, where I was nowhere in sight. That photo hurt. She'd scrubbed me out of my own family history. Since then, my life's changed a lot. I'm 30 now, in a stable relationship with my partner Noah, who's been my rock through everything. I've built a life of my own, worked my way up in a decent job, and managed to scrape together some security. The scars are still there, though. Then last week, I got an unexpected call from my mom. It took me a minute to even process her voice. It had been a decade. Her tone was cold at first, a bit like she was calling a distant relative rather than her own son. After some awkward chit-chat, she finally got to the point. She'd been diagnosed with ALS a year ago. She'd kept it a secret because she didn't want sympathy. But she's at the point now where she can't manage on her own and has no one left to help. In that same breath, she casually brought up the inheritance my grandparents left me years back, suggesting that I use it to help cover her care costs now. That was a gut punch. The grandparents who left me that money had loved me unconditionally. After my parents kicked me out, they'd wanted to help, but my dad refused to let them transfer any funds to me, saying he chose his path, let him lie in it. They were heartbroken, but told me there'd be something for me one day. That money was meant for my education, for giving me a shot at life after they'd passed. But by the time I was in a position to access it, I'd already learned how to survive on my own. Now, hearing her demand I use it for her care, I had to bite my tongue to keep from laughing. I asked her point blank, "Why now, after everything? You cut me out, erased me like I was a stranger." She went quiet for a second, then brushed it off with, "That was your father's doing." I wasn't convinced. Maybe he was the enforcer, but she never stepped up for me either. So now I'm left with this dilemma. Part of me feels obligated, like maybe this is my chance to make peace. But a bigger part feels like that inheritance is the one piece of family I have left, a last gift from the grandparents who loved me. Helping her now feels like another way of erasing myself, like I'm going back to being the son who stays silent and obedient. I told her I'd think about it, but deep down, I think I know my answer. My life is finally in my hands, and after all these years, I don't want to give up that last piece of love I was given. Especially not for someone who only remembers I exist when she needs something. I waited 6 years to divorce my cheating husband. Now I'll get $200,000, house and a car, AITA for planning my independence. The beginning of our marriage was amazing. We were happy and even had 2 beautiful babies together. But after our second child, everything went downhill. He cheated on me with someone close, my own cousin. And the apology he offered? Pathetic. All I got was a half-hearted sorry, followed by complaints about my body. At 4 months postpartum, I didn't need to hear that I was built like a refrigerator. I felt broken, but I was also trapped. So, I started thinking strategically. When I first met with a family lawyer, I quickly realized that leaving would ruin me financially. We barely had $25,000 between us, and dividing that wouldn't get me anywhere. We didn't own any property, I had no car, no job, and I was a stay-at-home mom. I applied for every job I could find, but nothing came through. Alimony and child support wouldn't cover half of what I needed to survive with 2 little ones. So I let him believe I'd forgiven him. I continued to play the role of a devoted wife, all while he kept making mistakes. The second time he cheated was with some random woman he met on a night out. That time, I snapped. Out of pure anger, I cheated on him too. Of course, he never found out. I was smart about it, unlike him. For years, I plotted my escape while building my independence in secret. I took advantage of everything he offered. When he paid for my trade school, I went all in. It was an expensive program, and he covered every penny. We moved, bought a house, and he started earning significantly more. I quietly built a career, secured my own income, and prepared to stand on my own feet. Now, I finally have a job I love, and my financial future looks solid. I haven't filed for divorce yet, and he has no clue about my plan. But I'm ready. After nearly 7 years, I can walk away with my share of around $200,000, the house, the car he paid off, and most importantly, my independence. I even took charge of my health, losing 66 pounds with his support for weight loss treatments. I had a breast reduction and lift, and I feel fantastic. For the first time in years, I'm genuinely excited for what's ahead. I know I look great, and I'm confident that when the time is right, I'll find love again. Edit. I can already hear people judging me for cheating back. But what did you expect? For me to stay faithful while he slept with other women? I wasn't about to go without intimacy for nearly a decade. My abusive father couldn't pay this month's rent, so I kicked him out of the house. He has nowhere else to go, but I don't care. AITA. I'm 28 and recently bought my own house. I moved out when I was 18. Not really by choice, but because my dad basically pushed me out. Our relationship has been rocky ever since, mostly due to his heavy drinking and smoking, which caused a lot of issues back then. A couple of months ago, he lost his house for not keeping up with his loan payments and called me, needing a place to stay temporarily until he could get back on his feet. I laid down a few ground rules: either pay rent, $400, or cover groceries, around $250 to $300, and absolutely no smoking in the house. He laughed and said, "I'm your father. I shouldn't have to pay." I didn't budge, so he reluctantly agreed to cover groceries. The moment he moved in, it was one issue after another. He leaves messes everywhere, doesn't clean up, smokes indoors despite the rule, and drinks like he's celebrating every night. The final straw was last week when he told me he couldn't buy groceries for the month. When I asked why, he claimed, "You eat a lot," but then admitted he spent all his cash on smokes and alcohol. I'd had enough of him treating my place like it was his and disrespecting all the boundaries I'd set, so I told him it was time for him to leave. Edit. I'm surprised at how much attention this post got. Thanks for all the support. Here are a few more details. We didn't have a formal contract. Everything was agreed upon verbally. Getting him to leave won't be easy since society tends to expect that sons take care of their elderly parents, so police usually aren't very helpful in situations like this. Part of the reason I even agreed to let him stay was because I thought maybe helping him would bring some positive change, or maybe even his validation after years of neglect. But I see now how naive that was. As for getting him out if he refuses to leave, I'll wait for him to go out to buy his supplies, change the locks immediately, and leave myself for a while. If he tries to break in, I'll have no choice but to involve the cops. So, AITA for setting clear boundaries and following through when he didn't respect them? My boyfriend had sex with a guy when he went on a business trip to Utah. He claims the altitude made him gay for a moment and claims he is straight. Reddit, what should I do? I 28F have been with my boyfriend 29M for 3 years. Every now and then, he has to travel to Utah for work because his team has a customer service branch there. A friend of ours, who also happens to be his coworker, texted me while he was away, saying that my boyfriend had cheated on me with a guy from the customer care team. At first, I brushed it off as some sort of joke or misunderstanding. For one, my boyfriend has always identified as straight, and for another, I just couldn't picture him doing that. When he came back home, I asked him about it, expecting him to laugh it off or deny it. But instead, he got quiet, had us sit down, and told me, "It's true. I did have a one-night stand with a guy." I couldn't believe it. I asked him if he was saying he was gay or bi. Regardless, cheating is cheating, right? But he quickly denied being gay and said it was a one-time thing. According to him, the strangest thing happened, and he explained that he suddenly became gay. I just stared at him. He said he thought it was due to the altitude. Apparently, when he was at dinner with his Utah coworkers, He felt an unexplainable attraction that he blames on being at a higher altitude. I genuinely thought he was messing with me, but he was completely serious. He swore that as soon as he got back home and was at sea level, he was back to being straight. Honestly, I was baffled and even asked if he'd been drugged or something, but he explained that he was in a group the entire time, up until he was alone with this guy. He then went on to say that he'd done a lot of thinking on his way home and confirmed within himself that he's definitely straight, but that this altitude accidentally turned him gay temporarily. At this point, I'd had enough and told him, "Well, I guess we're breaking up." He looked at me like I was the crazy one and said it wasn't his fault, claiming that human actions are just a byproduct of accidental brain chemistry, and higher altitudes have a scientifically proven effect on the brain. I'm sitting here, trying to piece together what I just heard, and he's looking at me like I'm in the wrong for being mad. He says he can't believe I would blame him for something medical and scientific that he supposedly couldn't control. Now I'm left wondering if I'm overreacting or if this altitude theory actually has any merit. I know it sounds absurd, but could altitude affect orientation that drastically? And if it could, does it excuse what happened? Or am I just being completely gaslit here? I'm genuinely confused.